See, you don't quit it, and you don't quit in sports. You retire. You don't get to quit. It's not an option. See, someone told me that a long time ago. That ain't even an option. And the person told me that, he ain't here anymore. He died. This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Randall Handles Football Podcast. I'm your host, Randall Tebus. So we are now entering Week 14 of the NFL season, which means that there are officially 4 weeks left of the season. We finally had our very first team clinch a playoff spot, and with this week, we'll probably have a few more teams clinching playoff spots. So before we get into the schedule for this week, let's just recap what happened last week in Week 13. Again, due to the COVID-19 outbreak, there have been 2 games that were postponed last week, and that was the Dallas Cowboys versus the Baltimore Ravens, which was originally scheduled for Thursday and was eventually moved until Tuesday. The second game that was postponed was between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Washington football team. That game was originally scheduled for Sunday morning, and that game was moved to Monday afternoon. So with that being said, there was no Thursday game last week, and instead most of the games were played on Sunday. We had a doubleheader on Monday, and one last game on Tuesday. Throughout all of my picks, I correctly picked 9 games, 9 winners last week, and incorrectly picked 6 teams. My 6 incorrect picks were the Tennessee Titans beating the Cleveland Browns, and instead it was a very one-sided game when Cleveland dominated the Tennessee Titans. The Houston Texans versus the Indianapolis Colts, I picked the Texans to win, and they had their chance to win that game at the very end until there was a fumble, which ultimately led to Indianapolis holding on to the victory. The Chicago Bears were, upset by the Detroit Lions. They had a lead for most of that entire game until Detroit came back in the fourth quarter and eventually held on to win that game. My lock of the week was actually an incorrect pick last week. Unfortunately, I picked the Seattle Seahawks to beat the New York Giants, and I'm sure a lot of people picked the same thing. It was a very big upset to see the New York Giants beating the Seattle Seahawks. A lot of people said that the Seattle Seahawks were the best team in the NFC and were the pick to come and to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl this year. And unfortunately, I think that game against the Giants probably changed a lot of people's minds, including mine as well. And at this point, we don't even know if the Seahawks will win the NFC West, as now they're in a virtual tie with the Los Angeles Rams for the top seed in the NFC West. My fifth incorrect pick was the Los Angeles Chargers beating the New England Patriots. And man, was I absolutely wrong. The Patriots absolutely handed it to the Chargers and won that game 45-0. So that was a big missed pick by me. And the last team I picked to win that did not was the San Francisco 49ers beating the Buffalo Bills on Monday night. A lot of people are saying that the game wasn't even close, and I think the stats show that it was a little bit closer than people indicate. But ultimately, Buffalo was throwing the ball all over the place against that Niners secondary, and they did dominate that game for most of the time. I think they had like 6 straight possessions of scoring drives, so Buffalo handed it to the 49ers as well. Like I said, my lock of the week was the Seattle Seahawks to beat the New York Giants, and that did not happen. My upset of the week was the Washington football team beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so guess what? That was not a part of my incorrect pick, so I correctly chose the Washington football team to give Pittsburgh its first loss of the season. And this week, I believe the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get their second loss of the season and will no longer be the number 1 seed in the AFC. that will belong to the Kansas City Chiefs by the end of Week 14. So with that being said, let's take a look at the schedule for Week 14. The first game on the slate for Thursday Night Football is between the New England Patriots and the Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams are hosting the Patriots, and this game will be played on the West Coast. So we have a team going from East Coast to West Coast on a short week that usually does not bode well. However, we are talking about Bill Belichick, a Bill Belichick coach team, so that's always a factor to be taken in. However, typically I choose home teams on Thursday night games, and so I am going to pick the Los Angeles Rams to beat the New England Patriots here in Week 14 and have sole possession of first place in the NFC West, at least for a time being. Start going into our Sunday morning games. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the Minnesota Vikings. I know Minnesota is trying to make it into that 7th and last wildcard spot, but unfortunately they're running into a tough Tampa Bay team, a Tampa Bay team that itself is trying to hold on to a playoff spot. And I just like Tom Brady in this matchup more than Kirk Cousins. I like Tampa Bay's defense to be able to hold and contain that Minnesota Vikings rushing game. And I think if that happens, Tampa Bay can really blow this game wide open. I'm picking the Buccaneers to beat the Minnesota Vikings here and really secure their playoff spot and really give Minnesota a big blow. The next game, again, has playoff implications as the Arizona Cardinals travel to New York to take on the Giants. Now, the New York Giants have won, I believe it's 4 straight games. They've been on a bit of a tear lately, especially again last week when they did knock off the Seattle Seahawks. They're supposed to get Daniel Jones back this week from his hamstring injury. And really, Kyler Murray has not been playing very well at the quarterback spot for Arizona these past few weeks. However, I still do like Arizona in this game. It wouldn't surprise me if the Giants win. But I just think that overall, Arizona is the better team. They have a good defense. They have a fantastic offense. And so long as Kyler Murray is able to use his legs a little bit and keep plays alive, I really do think Arizona can handle this game. And I'm choosing Arizona to win this game and beat the New York Giants. The next matchup sees the Kansas City Chiefs going into Miami to take on the Dolphins. I know Miami's been on a tear lately. They've had, I think it's like 20 straight games of having a takeaway. And I believe that streak is going to come to an end this week against the Kansas City Chiefs offense. A team that does not turn the ball over, a team that can move the ball very efficiently. And so ultimately, I have the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Miami Dolphins here. And what will end up making the Kansas City Chiefs the number 1 seed in the entire AFC. The next matchup sees the Tennessee Titans going into Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. This game will be my lock of the week as I'm picking Tennessee to win this game against Jacksonville. I know Tennessee had a bit of a disappointment last week against Cleveland, but let's be honest, Cleveland isn't the same team as Jacksonville. The Jaguars are on an 11-game losing streak, and right now they do not have an NFL caliber starting quarterback on their roster. I believe Mike Glennon is still going to be the starting quarterback for Jacksonville. Although I believe Gardner Minshew is finally healthy enough to be the starting quarterback, I think they're still going with Glennon. I just like Tennessee in this game. Tennessee will be a playoff team this year. They might even be a division winner and hosting a playoff game. So I'm going to pick Tennessee here to beat Jacksonville, and this is my lock of the week. Tennessee Titans will beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. The next matchup is a battle of NFC North teams as the Green Bay Packers go into Detroit to take on the Lions. Green Bay here is the better overall team. They have better offense, a better defense, and probably the better special teams here. That Green Bay offense has been scary all season long, led by Aaron Rodgers. And really, Aaron Jones isn't having quite as good of a season as he did last season when he led the league in rushing touchdowns, but he's still having a very productive season. And so I'm going to pick Green Bay here to win this game and almost lock up that NFC North division title. The next matchup sees the Dallas Cowboys going into Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. The battle of backup quarterbacks going at each other. This will be Andy Dalton's return to Cincinnati, and I think that enough gives him motivation to have a terrific game. I think the Cowboys are good enough to beat the Bengals. I don't think the Bengals are a very good team, especially without starting quarterback Joe Burrow. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys here. It's going to be a bit of a redemption game, or a bit of a revenge game, I should call it, for Andy Dalton going into Cincinnati. I have the Cowboys beating the Bengals here. The next matchup sees the Houston Texans going into Chicago to take on the Bears. Chicago has been an absolute disaster after a terrific start to the season when they started out 4-0 and eventually started the season 5-1. Since then, they've rattled off 6 straight losses and right now are sitting at a record of 5-7. They still do have a chance to make the playoffs if they do go on a bit of a tear and end the season strong. However, I think Houston is the better team here. I like Deshaun Watson. He's a very good quarterback. Chicago had their chance to draft Deshaun Watson, right? If you remember back to that 2017 or 2018 draft, when they actually traded up to take Mitch Trubisky with Deshaun Watson and with Pat Mahomes still on the board, people are going to look back at that draft and say Chicago really blew it. They had a chance at two franchise quarterbacks, really, with Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, 2 generational talents, but they didn't take them. Instead, they took Trubisky. So it is a bit of a game for Deshaun Watson to really show Chicago that, hey, y'all messed up not taking me. I think Deshaun Watson's going to come out and ball in this game, and they're really going to hand it to Chicago and really eliminate any hope that Chicago could make the playoffs. So again, I am picking the Texans to beat the Bears. The next matchup sees the Denver Broncos going into Carolina to take on the Panthers. I think this is a very evenly matched game, especially with a healthy Drew Lock and a healthy Teddy Bridgewater. Both of these quarterbacks are very capable. We're still waiting to see Drew Lock for an entire season. Of course, Teddy Bridgewater does have that experience from Minnesota. So like I said, these are 2 very evenly matched teams, I believe. However, I'm just going to hand it to the home team. And I'm going to pick the Panthers to win this game against the Broncos. Neither of these teams really have a shot at the playoffs this year. And so really they're just playing for NFL draft seeding here. So again, I am going to pick the Panthers to beat the Broncos. The next matchup sees Seattle taking on the second New York team in as many weeks. The Seattle Seahawks are hosting the New York Jets. And we have a team that's, probably one of the best teams in the NFC taking on the worst team in the entire NFL. A team that does not have its first win of the season. The Jets should have gotten their first win of the season last week when they were playing the Raiders. It took I don't want to call it a Hail Mary, but a blown coverage by the Jets with 4 seconds left in the game to lose that game on a 50-yard strike from Derek Carr to Henry Ruggs. Only the Jets, man. Only the Jets could do something like that. And as a result, immediately after the game, they did fire their defensive coordinator for really blowing that game. So that being said, the Jets' morale is at an all-time low, I believe. And so I'm really looking to see Seattle really get back into that winning streak, and I'm really hoping that they can blow this game up. I'm looking to see Seattle win very easily here against the Jets. The next matchup, as we go into our afternoon games, sees the Indianapolis Colts going into Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. I'm picking the Colts here to win. I think the Colts overall have a better offense, a better defense here. The Colts do have one of the top defenses in the entire NFL. They can really get after the passer with their pass rush, and they can really shut down the run. With DeForest Buckner and I'm blanking on their linebacker's name, Darius Leonard in the middle, so they can really shut down the run. I think Indianapolis is going to win this game against the Raiders and really secure their spot as a playoff team. Of course, if you're Las Vegas, you probably need about 2 or 3 more wins to get into that playoff spot. Again, right now, if the season ended, they would be on the outside looking in. And again, this loss is going to deal them a devastating blow for their playoff chances. The next game sees the Washington football team going into Arizona to take on the San Francisco 49ers. That's right, for the second week in a row, the 49ers will be hosting a game in Arizona in the Cardinals' home stadium. With that being said, Washington, if they do win this game with the Giants, and if the Giants do lose to Arizona, they will be the team leading in the NFC East. However, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the 49ers are a better team than Washington. Even though right now the 49ers are on the outside of the playoffs trying to get in. Of course, they are going to need to probably win out and get some help to really get into the playoffs. But they could still be a playoff team. And same thing with Washington. I still really do believe that Washington is the best team in the NFC East right now. with Carson Wentz officially being benched for Jalen Hurts. The New York Giants taking on a tough team in the Arizona Cardinals, and the Dallas Cowboys eventually getting a win. This is going to really come down to these last couple of weeks to determine the winner in the NFC East. But for this game, I have the 49ers beating the Washington football team and getting, I believe it's going to end up being their second home win of the season. You know, San Francisco has not been taking care of their home field, and that's probably their biggest problem. The next matchup sees, again, another NFC East team taking on the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans is going into Philadelphia to take on the Eagles, and this is going to be Jalen Hurts' first career start. I think that could add some effect and really give the Eagles a chance to win this game. However, I think New Orleans is the best team in the NFC. Even with an injured Drew Brees, they've been doing nothing but winning here. With Taysom Hill as their starting quarterback, they've been able to run the ball very effectively. Last week, they were able to throw the ball very effectively. I think that New Orleans, especially with the healthy Drew Brees, is probably the most complete team in the NFC. And at this point, I have them being my NFC representatives in the Super Bowl. And I think that the Saints here will be able to take care of business and handle the Eagles and really still hold on to that number 1 seed in the NFC. So again, I have the Saints beating the Eagles. Our last matchup for Sunday afternoon sees the Atlanta Falcons going into Los Angeles and taking on the Chargers. This officially, technically, is my upset of the week, as I'm picking the Chargers to beat the Falcons. As it is, Vegas has Atlanta as a 3-point favorite over the Los Angeles Chargers, and so this does constitute an upset in some sense, but it's really not that much of an upset. Atlanta's not a very good team, and well, after their loss last week, I'm going to say the Chargers are not a good team. They showed last week that they can't handle the running game, and unfortunately, I think Atlanta just likes to throw the ball a little bit too much, even though they have a capable back in Todd Gurley. I think if Atlanta does give the ball to their backs 30 plus times this game, they'll probably end up winning this game. But I don't see Atlanta doing that, as they like to put the ball in Matt Ryan's hands. I think if that happens, the Chargers could get some turnovers. The Falcons have shown that they can't protect their passer. With Joey Bosa rushing the passer on the edge, I think that Chargers could get a turnover or two that will ultimately flip this game and allow the Chargers to win this game. So I'm picking the Los Angeles Chargers to beat the Atlanta Falcons. Now going into our Sunday night football game, we have the number 1 seeded Pittsburgh Steelers going into the number 3 seeded Buffalo Bills. That's right, we have a battle of a 11-1 team going into Buffalo, a 9-3 team. I think ultimately Buffalo is the better team. As I was looking at Pittsburgh's schedule and the teams that they've beaten, I really haven't been impressed with too many of their victories outside of beating the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. Other than that, they haven't been playing very competitive teams, in my opinion. Whereas Buffalo definitely has. They've been playing the Dolphins and the Patriots and, the Los Angeles Rams and the Seahawks and the 49ers, so on and so forth. I think Buffalo is the more complete team here. It's really going to come down to Pittsburgh's defense, I think. Can TJ Watt and Bud Dupree and company really force some turnovers from Josh Allen? That's something that San Francisco was not able to do last week. And they allowed Josh Allen to get outside of the pocket and make plays with his legs. And I think if Pittsburgh can contain Josh Allen, keep him in the pocket, get a couple of sacks, force some errant throws, they could get this victory here. But I am picking Buffalo. And now you might say, well, isn't this an upset of the week as well? No. Technically, again, going by Vegas books, Buffalo is the team that is favored here against Pittsburgh. So I'm, again, just going with the team that's favored. I am picking Buffalo to beat the Steelers. And lastly, our Monday night matchup sees the Baltimore Ravens going into Cleveland to take on the Browns with huge playoff implications. Right now, Cleveland and Baltimore would be a playoff team if the season ended today. And I think that because Baltimore is a fringe playoff team, they do need to rattle off some wins and get some help. And for that reason, I think that Baltimore has a little bit more motivation, and I'm picking the Baltimore Ravens to beat the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. I think this is going to be a tough game for both teams. It's going to be a hard-nosed, run-the-ball, play some defense kind of game. And I think the team that ends up committing less turnovers will be the winner here. I think if Lamar Jackson is able to make some plays with his legs, that could also be a deciding factor in this game. But ultimately, I am picking the Ravens to beat the Cleveland Browns here on Monday Night Football. An exciting time for Cleveland to actually be excited on Monday Night Football. So hopefully, I'm kind of rooting for Cleveland to win this game just because it's been so long since they have been a good team. But I do think Baltimore will squeak this one out. So now just going through all my picks again. Starting out on Thursday, I have the Rams beating the Patriots. Going into Sunday, I have the Buccaneers beating the Vikings, the Cardinals beating the Giants, the Chiefs beating the Dolphins, the Titans beating the Jaguars, Green Bay going into Detroit to beat the Lions, the revenge game for Andy Dalton going into Cincinnati and winning. I have the Cowboys beating the Bengals. I have the Texans beating Chicago and the Panthers beating the Broncos. Going into our Sunday afternoon games, the Seattle Seahawks beating the New York Jets, the Colts going into Las Vegas to beat the Raiders, the 49ers taking care of business and beating the Washington football team, New Orleans Saints beating the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Los Angeles Chargers upsetting the Atlanta Falcons. For our Sunday night game, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Buffalo Bills. I'm picking the Bills to win this game. And for our Monday night matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and Cleveland Browns, I have the Baltimore Ravens winning this game as well. My lock of the week is the Tennessee Titans taking care of business against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And my upset of the week will be the Los Angeles Chargers beating the Atlanta Falcons. So again, let me know what you guys think in the link in the comments below. This has been another episode of the Randall Handles Football Podcast. Thank you all for listening.
I don't care who you play, whether it's a high school team, a junior college team, a college team, much less an NFL team. When you turn the ball over 5 times, 4 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, 3 others in field position to set up touchdowns, you ain't going to beat anybody I just talked about. Anybody. All right? And that was a disgraceful performance, in my opinion. We threw that game. We gave it away by doing that. We gave them the friggin' game. In my opinion, that sucked. What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.